I like use cases. It's a good way to give us a sense of what's going on in a particular space and get good ideas about things we might be able to work with our customers. So I had the opportunity to talk to RJ Kedziora, who's the co-founder of Estenda Solutions, and they focus on software and data analytics for the healthcare market. He joined me on this bonus episode of The Business of Tech. Thread has declared death to the ticket. Did you know tickets date back to the 1800s? And customers hate tickets. Thread uses an approach for connecting, communicating, and ultimately collaborating. Thread allows people to come together around a topic. They can discuss and make decisions. They can share and invite the right people. The future of service is collaborative. Supercharge your service experience by seamlessly integrating AI and automation to meet your customers where they are, in Teams, Slack, and desktops, not in tickets. With instant updates to and from ConnectWise, Autotask, and Halo PSA, keep all communication in one place, where it should be, with people. Decrease time to resolution 30% with chat-based support by visiting getthread.com/MSP Radio to declare death to the ticket. Well, RJ, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
So I'm going to start with sort of the easy one. Tell me a little bit about what your firm does so that we can get a kind of sense of where you fit in the ecosystem.
Yeah. Estenda Solutions is a company I co-founded, been around for 20 years, which is always crazy to talk about. But we are the custom software, data analytics, and now AI company that helps other entities create products that they're taking to market. Very much focused on the innovative side in the world of digital health. We've focused on digital health before it was called digital health, which has been quite a fascinating journey over the last 20 years. But mix of customers from Fortune 50, large medical device manufacturers, and then also startups, working with them, developing those solutions. Always much focused around the idea of improving health and wellness of our fellow humans.
So give me I'm sure you've got one or two use cases that are always your great examples of work you've done. Give me a sense of what those are.
Yeah, two quick projects come to mind. One, we think of it as a flagship software project that we've been part of for the 20 years now. And it's through a partnership with the Joslin Diabetes Center, working with the Indian Health Services here in America, which is responsible for the American Indian Alaskan Native population. It's a diabetic retinopathy surveillance program. So as you have diabetes, which is a chronic condition, it can impact your vision. And so diabetic retinopathy is the leading cause of preventable blindness. And we're part of a network of cameras, about 100 deployed throughout the U.S. now, where we can take images of the back of your eye, the retina of your eye, for detection of diabetic retinopathy. And through that program, we integrate the medical record systems and do extensive data analysis and research as part of that. And in terms of AI, retinopathy solutions and looking at those images is some of the earliest approved by the FDA systems. So that's one of the large scale programs that we work on. But then if we look at the startup realm, we've helped some companies create digital weight loss solutions, looking at data and bringing together that wearable information, making sense of your daily situation, what's going on with your life, and bringing together that medical information to create a comprehensive picture of the patient. And then more recently with, the advent of, I'll call it the advent of AI, but everybody sort of forgets AI has been around for quite a while now, decades. It's not something that just jumped on the scene. We've been involved in various AI systems over the years, developing medication recommendation systems that were expert system based back in the early 2000s. And today now implementing Gen AI types of solutions to address the challenges in healthcare.
Now, I've got a couple of questions. You led me right to the first one. So I'm with you. Like, we've been talking about AI. There's machine learning before that. There's been data analytics. We all remember big data. There's been lots of trends where there's kind of this thread through this. But something is different about this kind of moment in time. And it could be an awareness piece. It could be the breakthrough in what generative AI can do. The models have reached a level of maturity. It could just be funding. But I wanted to ask you, what do you think is different about this moment than the previous work that you'd been doing over the past, 20 years before that?
Yeah. It's the ability for the average person, the non-technical person, to take advantage of this technology and really make an impact. So going back, I referenced the medication recommendation system we did, and we were ingesting large amounts of data and developed an extensive expert system behind the scenes. And then the presentation for that in the user interface was, very much of that style of the early 2000s. And fast forward today, to create that same system, we can now use extensive APIs and the power of Gen AI to craft those rules and figure out what we want to be able to do with them and present it to the user in a very useful, interactive fashion. But a lot of what we do in, those machine learning algorithms and Gen AI today, it's all about the data. And one of the biggest shifts is, I learned SQL, which is a programming language to be able to interact with data. It's relatively easy to learn in the grand scheme of things, but it's something you have to learn and understand and how to use it effectively. Where now we're developing systems that put the Gen AI on top of that data, so the average person doesn't have to learn or understand tools and technology and can start querying and looking at that data. You don't even, people generally start with like Excel, but you don't even have to start with Excel and learn how to use Excel. You can start querying the data and okay, what does my patient population look like today? How many people do I have that are over 60 with diabetes, and start looking at, all sorts of different situations without that deeper understanding of technology. And I think that's the power of what's the inflection point that we're seeing today.
It's interesting because I want to ask you then about, as somebody who's been doing a bunch of product development, so I've served with some product organizations for a period of time, and I always felt like the report builder was the bane of our existence, right? The fact that, you all end up in a situation where you're trying to give customers data and you're trying to give them access to it. And you either build a bunch of pre-canned reports and then they always tell you they can't get enough data out of it, or you build a very intricate report builder and no one ever uses it. Are we at the moment now where that is the problem that we're able to solve in a smarter way now? Is that and what does that look like? Is it a chatbot? Is it voice? Is it a drawing tool? What are you seeing in this report space that's so different?
That is one of the challenges. So I think Gen AI has sort of been searching for the solution and where does it add value and make sense. Everybody, you look at the startup world now and everyone's like, we use AI, and okay, do you really? But in that report space, particularly, in getting data out of a system is huge. So, in the past, we would have created and still do have these projects where we're creating the very static, controlled reporting solutions that they typically go to management still, the monthly reporting, things that are very iterative in nature. That still very much exists. But as we work on different projects and make the data available to people to look at and understand and search, again, you don't want to learn that skill of creating the report or go through the exercise, product development exercise and figure, okay, what are the parameters we want to display? And okay, do we use a pie chart or do we use a bar chart? What makes sense to display this data accurately? Just let people have at it. And it's through that natural language interface where you're just typing, find me all the patients that have diabetes, or find all the patients that have congestive heart disease, and what are their comorbid conditions, is a very easy thing to say in natural language, speaking like we are today. It's easy to do versus writing a SQL query, which we won't go into. But it does provide, you need a level of expertise and data analysts, and data analysts aren't going away anytime soon. They're definitely a necessary group of people that we need in the world to figure that data out. But more people can get to this data now, whether it's just through typing or even voice mode that some of these systems are creating.
Now, what do you think are the prerequisites for customers to be ready to take advantage of this? So it used to be, of course, everything had to be incredibly structured, but I'm not buying into the fact that everything can just be chaos and then it will all get sorted out by AI. Give me a little bit of a sense of what's necessary and where the opportunity is to sort of help customers get their data ready.
Yeah, it's a great point, because one of the starting conversations I have with a lot of people, they come to us and they're like, we need to create an AI strategy. Okay, great. Let's start with a data strategy, because you can't just have a mess of information that is then understood by an AI. You need to provide that structure or methodology to be able to put that data in a format that is usable by the AI. Whether it is unstructured data out of a PDF document or your electronic medical record system, it has to have an understanding of what that information is and available. And then from that data perspective, all of the cybersecurity, privacy guidelines all apply very much to this data. As you are delving into healthcare information, and HIPAA, guidelines come to play very quickly in terms of how you access that data and make it available. So, AI is important, but it's really the underlying data which is driving those conversations.
And are there particular frameworks that you're embracing for that have sort of accelerated the ability to help customers?
Yeah, so Estenda as an organization is ISO 13485 certified, which basically says we have a good, well-documented software development process. But it's really driven by checklists. It's, okay, let's make sure we are thinking about X, Y, and Z, thinking about privacy, thinking about, permissions. We typically start with what's called a zero trust architecture. It's like, as you get logged into the system, you have no access to anything. And then I have to, apply those principles to it. So as we think about these projects and develop them from, the ground up, typically it's applying those checklists. And okay, we might not implement, feature A or X today, but at least we've thought about it. And then that can be applied to a later stage. But there are a number of ISO standards out there which are incredible in terms of framing these conversations, in terms of quality, in terms of security, of how, you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time, in terms of cybersecurity. The government has NIST guidelines that are available. OWASP out there has extensive guidelines. HIPAA has guidelines. It's less prescriptive, but definitely applies. And the thing to keep in mind with all of this is technology is important, but it's very much about people and processes as well. When you are implementing a cybersecurity system or protecting your data, looking at privacy, you can't forget the people and the processes in place to control that data.
So give me a sense of how you're using AI for the development process. Is that now something that is infused into your developers? Are you writing code with it? Like, what are you finding that the practical applications in your own organization are?
It's interesting because as time goes on, you're not going to be able to avoid it as a developer. It is just there. It's being embedded into the tools and processes that we use all of the time. So you're not avoiding it. It's then how do you take more distinct advantage of those tools and technology? I went through an exercise very recently. I was talking about enabling a system to do querying of data through natural language, and I used a new API to me. I came up through the programming ranks, but I don't program anymore. But very quickly, using ChatGPT, I was able to get Python running on my system, figure out how to use the API, and create a solution. It's a demo solution. It's not production worthy by any means. So you do have to make sure that you just don't take what is being offered to you and plug it in there. You really do have to make sure you understand that. And it doesn't create the perfect solution every time, not because it can't, but because it doesn't have enough information in the moment. So if you ask ChatGPT, write me an algorithm to do X, okay, it can do that. It's not going to get it right all of the time, but it's going to give you that jump start to understanding it. And then you have to understand the framework, what else is going on within your production application to make sure it's sense. There's an aspect of, copy and paste, just don't copy and paste it. Like, make sure you understand it. So we use it there from a software development perspective, but also from that higher level of product development perspective of requirements analysis and figuring out what needs to be done. I love just asking it, what have I forgotten? So I talked about these checklists. It's the same type of idea. It's like, okay, here's what we're doing with the system. Here's what I'm thinking about. What else do I need to consider to be able to help jumpstart those thought processes? And then on the back end, from a quality perspective, I put together a webinar a couple of months ago of just how to use it for generating data in medical scenarios. So you can sit there and be like, I have a patient with diabetes, generate me, a blood glucose profile for this patient, where they eat meals 3 times a day. And, it generated that information for me. And then I was able to change it and tweak it very quickly. So instead of like, okay, well, they had a bigger meal at lunch. So what is the impact on the blood glucose? And it typically goes higher in that situation if you have diabetes, and it was able to generate that data. So it's, yes, I could have done that myself, but it's about efficiency. Here's a great example. I've been doing user interviews for decades now. It's very easy to put those questions, but it still takes some time. I had to email a PhD about olfactory testing the loss of sense of smell. Plugged it in, plugged the individual's profile, and was like, generate me 10 questions to ask as the interview as part of this application we're developing. Boom, 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 boom. I changed them and tweaked them so it better fit my style, but it saved me a couple hours of time of putting together that list. So definitely advantages in terms of efficiency.
So sort of final question, what are customers asking about? Like what is the conversation you're having with them right now about what they're asking for?
It's a lot of, how do I get started? Where do I get started? How do I take advantage of this? And where do I take advantage of it? And that's where we then very quickly shift to the data conversation. So yes, AI, policy, process, play with it, very important. But it's then, let's shift, okay, you really need to understand the data. And that's where a lot of those conversations drive. Healthcare is the last industry to really embrace the idea of data. They've totally embraced technology. You look at your MRIs and all sorts of, lab testing that's available, and genetics, that, cancer research, so very much embrace technology. But it's new to the idea of data. So still lots of challenges there, and that's where those questions quickly go.
RJ Kedziora is the founder of Estenda Solutions, which specializes in software and data analysis for healthcare and medical companies. He's an expert in software development, data analytics, and a focus on the healthcare market. RJ, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. Great conversation.
Looking to reach an audience of thousands of MSPs and IT service providers? Put your ad right here on the Business of Tech and be on the show that 64% of MSPs report having listened to. A recurring top 50 tech news podcast. There are affordable options for you to reach our audience, and we can support any budget. Podcast listeners are more engaged, have a higher level of brand retention, and are more willing to listen to ads here than any other avenues. Want to know more? There's information at mspradio.com/engage, including a button to book a time to talk. I'm looking forward to that discussion. The Business of Tech is written and produced by me, Dave Sobel, under ethics guidelines posted at businessof.tech. If you like the content, please make sure to hit that like button and follow or subscribe. It's free and easy, and the best way to support the show and help us grow. You can also check out our Patreon, where you can join the Business of Tech community at patreon.com/MSPradio, or buy our Why Do We Care merch at businessof.tech. Finally, if you're interested in advertising on the show, visit mspradio.com/engage. Once again, thanks for listening to me, and I will talk to you again on our next episode of The Business of Tech.
Part of the MSP Radio Network.